Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I am going to be talking about the December 12th, 2019 full moon in Gemini. Now, full moons in astrology, as far as a basic meaning goes, full moons could be about very unrestrained, uninhibited unleashing of very powerful emotions that may have been suppressed for some time. It comes out, again, very powerful emotional energy. And given that this is Gemini, it could be where these emotions that a lot of people may be expressing that day may be very excitable and maybe in a very high strung you might see a lot of high-strung energy with this and very animated, strong animated emotional expression, and maybe even expressing manifold and variety of emotions at this time, as the moon in Gemini can be about emotional versatility. Now, the thing about this is, what you're talking about full moons in astrology, they could affect all the signs. Now, full moon in Gemini, given that this is going to be a full moon in Gemini, this could affect all signs collectively, but especially Gemini and Cancer. And Gemini, obviously, because it's in its sign, and Cancer because the moon does rule the sign, and the zodiac sign Cancer is very sensitive to all transits and phases of the moon. This could be attributed as to why, or at least plays a role in why Cancer is so moody, temperamental, and fickle. Now, especially if this is going to make a conjunction to one's Gemini or Cancer sun, moon, or ascendant, it will be very likely very strongly pronounced and emphasize this energy. Now, full moons in astrology can also give a greater propensity for accidents, I believe, as well. Now, given that this full moon is going to be in the zodiac sign Gemini, this could be there may be more accidents may be more prevalent due to driving while talking or texting or conversing, communicating with another passenger. It might be attributed to mischievous activity. It could be, sadly, you might have some more people doing things to others' cars that might not make them run the way they're supposed to, and thus give a greater proclivity for car accidents. This could be due to some kind of instigation. I mean, Gemini in an energy, very negative manifestation. I see this being about instigation. And if, like, say, well, Edwin, how does this, what would this have to do with an accident? Well, like, say, if somebody's been instigated or provoked somehow, and they're in a kind of acerbic state when they're driving, and if you're driving angry, of course, naturally, if you're not in full control of your emotions, you might have a greater tendency or propensity for accidents at this time. And the thing about this too, when you look at full moons in astrology, they could often be about endings and completions and culminations of things. Now, given that this is in Gemini, this could be the end of something that was very superficial, whether it would be a relationship or what have you. It could be an ending of something that was very mercurial and very vacillating. It could simply be the end of some writing or communication at this time may come to an ending and close. It might be an ending of, in some isolated cases, of vicariousness, where somebody maybe is just getting tired of maybe living through someone else's achievements and accomplishments, or maybe an ending with somebody they know that may be doing so. An ending connected with something that's very two-faced, a person that might be very two-faced, again, vacillating, a person that might be revealing their true colors, so to speak, at this time. An end of thievery, if there was some kind of stealing going around, say, in one person's place of employment or business, it could have a better chance of an ending now as opposed to many other transits, because Gemini energy negatively manifested could be about thievery and thieves, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is associated with thievery. Now, also, too, it can be the ending of something that was very mischievous, or something slanderous that was going on that was stated about somebody, let's say if somebody was having this like in their, say it was in their 10th house of reputation and public image, it could be the ending or completion of something slanderous that might have impacted strongly one's reputation and public image. Now, the ending of some gossiping, and again, the ending of some writing or communication, or say if some, even in some isolated cases, there was some kind of plagiarizing or forgery going on with something, and you had done some investigation regarding it. It could be the time when this is unveiled, and maybe the person is either that you may have suspected of was doing so at this time, and maybe it's proven. So those are some ways that this could manifest and pan out at this time. Now, it could also be a time when you're talking about full moons in astrology. It can be something that's associated again with revelations and unveilings. Now, given that this is in Gemini, it could be a revelation or unveiling of somebody maybe that was really dual-natured or two-faced, where the colors like the chameleon are basically unveiled and uncovered at this time. The ending of thievery, the revelation of a thief in some cases, whether it's a place of employment or what have you. Again, going back to plagiarism, something connected with that may come out, or the revelation or unveiling, disclosing of maybe somebody that might be very vacillating in nature and flighty that maybe you didn't really know about before. And also on a positive end, it could be something positive that could be disclosed maybe to yourself in some cases, of something connected like with being your versatility or being very multifaceted. Say if this falls in your first house in your natal chart, it could be a greater revelation, being more cognizant of your own, some of your own qualities and your attributes and characteristics at this time. Now, it could also be something where some kind of impersonation may come to life, whether it was somebody really like using some kind of identity fraud or theft, or something where actually a person was actually pretending to be somebody that they really weren't, going back to being two-faced. Something with forgery could come out at this time that you might have been suspicious of. This could be a good time for investigators, if investigators are investigating something pertaining to forgery or plagiarism at this time. Now, also too, when you're talking about full moons in astrology, it could be a time where one becomes very tired, full, very exasperated at something or someone. Now, given this is in Gemini, it could be a time where one becomes very tired, full, exasperated. Maybe it's someone that's very mercurial or vacillating or very superficial. It could be a time where one might be tired of some kind of superficial person in one's life, or maybe a relationship. Say that this falls in one's 7th house in one's chart. It could be a time where maybe a superficial connection might come to an end. It could be something where you're tired of something very inconstant, or a person that might be overly loquacious to the point of being garrulous at this time, or being overly inquisitive and nosy, asking you, bombarding you with a lot of personal questions, or maybe even mimicry in some cases. It could also be a time too where one simply might become really tired, exasperated, full, so to speak, of spreading oneself too thin. And I mean, depending on aspects this makes to a chart, it could actually sometimes take a toll on one's physical chart. I mean, or even by house, if this is like in the 1st or the 6th house in one's chart, it might have an impact on one's physical health. Or say if this is making even an adverse aspect to one's ascendant, Sun or Mars, it might have an impact on one's vitality and energy at this time. So anyway, well, it's also important to look at the house this falls in, as this could impact the delineation and interpretation. Now, interestingly enough for me, it's going to fall in my 2nd house in my natal chart. Now, on negatively manifest, this could be about a revelation of some superficial value at this time, but at the same time, I'm being optimistic about this, that this could be, the way this could pan out, this could be about some disclosure of some kind of money connected with some kind of writing at this time. And maybe it's time for me, it's being cognizant of needing a diversified portfolio. I'm just joking, of course, and being flippant. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. Now, it's also important to look at the aspects this makes to points in one's chart, as this could impact the delineation and interpretation. Now, mine is actually going to make a very tight conjunction to my natal part of fortune. Keeping my fingers crossed, this could be very auspicious for something monetary and fortuitous for something money related through some kind of writing or communication. So it could be very prosperous. I'm due to have some kind of luck in connection with money. So I'm hoping that I'm being cautiously optimistic regarding this at this time. Now, also too, if this is falling, I mean, let's say in some cases this could be about the ending or culmination or completion of a Gemini-like career, especially if this falls in one's 2nd, 6th, or 10th house in one's natal chart. It could be the ending of something with journalism or writing, being an author, a reporter, something that is connected with satellite, data communications, anything communications related, broadcasting, something that requires dexterity or the use of the hands, such as being an auto or refrigeration mechanic. Now, let's say if this falls in the 1st or the 6th house in one's natal chart, it could be a Gemini health-related issue that can come to light at this time. That could be revealed. It could be something with the shoulders, the arms, a hand or wrist at this time. Something with the fingers. Now, given that this is, if you're talking about a regular full moon and you're not talking about a supermoon or an lunar eclipse, generally I see these, if an injury does come, it could be something that's fairly minor. I'm not saying it never could be something serious. I think generally there's a greater propensity for something of a more serious nature if you're talking about a lunar eclipse or a supermoon. Now, and also aspects that are made to this can be important as well. If an injury does come to light that's Gemini related, and say this makes an adverse aspect to one's Uranus, it could be something that could be more sporadic, intermittent, kind of something that comes and goes, as far as maybe some kind of pain or maybe some spasm or what have you. Now, thing, and especially, I mean, if this is making, I mean, let's say it's in one's 1st or 6th, let's say if it's in the 6th house and it inconjuncts the ascendant especially, or if this makes an adverse aspect to one's Sun, Mars, or I mean, if it may, say if it's in the 1st house and it also makes an adverse aspect to one's natal Sun and or Mars, that can increase this propensity for some kind of injury, Gemini related perhaps. Now, another thing that's important as well is to look at the electional aspects it makes, as of course that could impact the delineation and interpretation of this as well. Now, at this time, it's going to make an inconjunct aspect to Venus in Capricorn. Now, this makes it very interesting, intriguing, because when you're talking about inconjuncts in astrology, of course, they could be about adjustments one may have to make. And it might be some decision time where one feels like, well, talking about the full moon in Gemini, say you're talking about a person or this is related to some relationship one wants. Well, the full moon in Gemini, I mean, it's not necessarily just about, it's not just about necessarily being tired, exasperated, or full of something. It could, I see this as really where it could reflect a strong, powerful emotional need for something. That's an emotional need that could be very amplified. Now, in some cases, this can manifest in wanting somebody that close to home with, given it's a moon. You're talking about the moon. That is a person that's very interesting, versatile, and not monotonous. A person that may not be that boring. Somebody that's very lively and vivacious. But the thing is, when you have the inconjunct of Venus in Capricorn, it shows that people could be torn between the energy I just described and being in conjunct of Venus and Capricorn, perhaps to maybe wanting something that's a little bit, well, stable, a person that's more responsible, a relationship that's more consistent and regimented. Gemini energy could be about being very loquacious energy, a person that could really talk a lot. Um, but when you're talking like Venus and Capricorn, that could be about a relationship where the person that you could be looking for could be one where where the ideas are taking, actions are taking precedence over verbiage and words. So people might be conflicted, and one may feel like they need to choose one at the expense of the other. So it could be, when you're talking about inconjuncts, when you have this kind of an aspect, it could be about where one may feel they have to sacrifice this one of these energies for the sake of the other, whether it would be giving up that need, that emotional need, that this full moon Gemini, to have somebody in their life that would have manifold interests, somebody that's very, very loquacious, very talkative, well-rounded, and maybe a situation that might be lighter than in contrast to a Venus and Capricorn situation. It might be something that might be a little bit more superficial and not really as stable or serious as a Venus. I should say serious in contrast to Venus and Capricorn situation. Now, another way, when looking at this with this full moon in Gemini and in making that inconjunct to Venus and Capricorn, I think another way this could manifest in the pan out. Remember, when you're talking about full moons in astrology, they could be, full moon could be about what's going public. So it could be something where people have to understand you're talking about, again, inconjunct aspect, which could be about adjustments. And when you're talking about a full moon in Gemini energy and going public with something, it could be something communications related. It could be something just as simple as like a beeper that might be more sophisticated. I don't know if they have anything. As an example, I'm throwing this out there arbitrarily, people. I don't know if they actually have this or not, but in an innovation, say like that's a phone and beeper combo. Something where you could have an innovation. People might really want to put something out there, but because you have this inconjunct with Venus and Capricorn, Capricorn energy could be more about what's traditional, what's conventional, and what it is that people might have a lot of ideas at this time about something communication related that they want to go public with, which of course, if somebody's going public with something communications related, could likely be something innovative and new. But when you have the inconjunct of Venus and Capricorn, what it could be is that it could be tied into something that might be seen as something conventional or traditional, or maybe it's in a communication and innovation, but where it's just maybe a slight modification on something that was previously invented. And people have to understand that it's still okay to come out with something like that, even if it has something about it that seems very conventional and might just be a slight modification of a current product that might be out. So anyway, well, also it's important to look at the degrees that the degree that this is in, because that could impact the interpretation delineation as far as Sabian symbols go. This is about this is going to be at 19 degrees Gemini. So the way this could manifest, given at 19 degrees, you're talking about full moons in astrology. It can be about endings, culminations, and completions. This could be about the end of a battle, perhaps with an adversary or somebody you had some strong animosity toward, or one that had that toward you, or both. In doing so with some cunning ability and being able to outmaneuver the opposition. It could be about extricating oneself from an adverse situation using that same cunning ability, perhaps, and it might even be some courage and fortitude as well. Now, it's also what's significant too, of course, is to look at other transits to your natal chart at this time, because they could be intensified and amplified given that they're taking place at the time of the full moon. Now, the transit sun for me, the transit Sun in Sagittarius is going to be in my 8th house, making it in conjunct to my Taurus ascendant. So the way this could manifest for me is that with the Sun in Sagittarius transiting my 8th house, that could be a focus on perhaps making a philosophical transformation. But the fact that it's in conjuncting my Taurus ascendant, it shows it could be an adjustment period, and there's a conflict with that, perhaps in being Taurus rising, wanting to be very stagnant, very sedentary, and having a strong aversion to change, and where even the physical body might be immovable, not literally immovable, but not wanting to really actually take the effort that is needed to make this kind of a change if necessary. So that's where things could be a little bit difficult for me. It could be very intensified at this time. And since we're talking about the Sun in astrology, it can kind of shine maybe the light on this issue, I believe, to some degree. Now, another thing is that other electional aspects, transits at this time may be intensified as well, because they are taking place at the time of this full moon. Now you're going to have the transit Sun in Sagittarius making a square to Neptune in Pisces. So this could be a conflict between this daydreaming and fantasizing, which is Neptune in Pisces, could conflict with the focus on doing something adventurous, athletic, outdoors, doing something maybe with foreign travel or publishing or anything Sagittarius related, and even expanding horizons. But you might feel more like daydreaming and fantasizing as opposed to actually doing this, and it might be taking a toll on some others' vitality at this time. Well, especially if transit Neptune is making an adverse aspect to one's Mars, Sun, or Ascendant at this time as well. Now, another thing I want to say about this full moon is that it's going to be a singleton. It's going to be the only planet that's going to be in an air sign. So this emotional energy for some will be even more intensified. It's going to stand out more so than usual. Another thing I want to talk about, the fact that this full moon is going to be in Gemini. I mean, Gemini is very, for being an air sign, very unpredictable, and Gemini energy can be dual nature and negatively manifest. This could be a time where somebody could almost just snap, like, and just be, when become these emotions that could be unleashed could be a big surprise to people, because it could almost be, some people might see it with some that completely out of the blue and unanticipated. They might be saying, oh man, this was like a different person. What happened here? Why did this person where did this outburst come from? Somebody, might be sitting around, real passive and real quiet for a little bit, and all of a sudden this animated emotional energy might just come out of nowhere, and people be looking at him like, well, him or her, like, well, where did this even come from? So it could be a really bit of a surprise to some people. Now, the one last thing I want to talk about, I wanted to just talk about as an example, this fell in one's 12th house in one's chart. Now, in some isolated cases, if the full moon in Gemini falls in one's 12th house, remember that the 12th house is connected with mental illness. In some isolated cases, it could be some revelation or unveiling of a Gemini-like mental illness, or it could be one where one might just come out with it, something that they've had for some time, and they just felt like talking about it to someone. It could be something, an extreme case is a multiple personality disorder, or just like a bipolar illness, or it might be something where maybe there was some gossiping going around behind one's back that might come out again, talking about if the full moon in Gemini falls in one's 12th house in one's natal chart. It could be where there might be some gossiping revealed that might be tied into secret sorrows, given that it's you're talking about the 12th house. And it could be a Gemini hidden adversary might be unveiled and come out at this time, or maybe even understanding that the dissipation and being cognizant of the fact that maybe there's some dissipation due to lack of an integrated purpose may lead to oneself undoing at this time. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my take on the December 12th, 2019 full moon in Gemini. And until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.